白夜に捧ぐ
Hi, this is Nafi,
And this is Juliet.
and welcome to our first Astra Archives entry. We will be making videos on the story and hidden lore in Alchemy Stars, from significant overarching plot threads to focused character videos on characters we enjoy. And to start off with a bang, we'll be beginning with the entire Carleen de Schwartz royal family tree, charting out the bloodline and taking a brief look at each character's backstory and motivations. We originally postponed this release on the chance of certain information being revealed in a couple of this year's event stories, but with nothing new there, and with the upcoming anniversary events seemingly revolving entirely around the secrets this family holds, we think it's best to post about it now, to take a look at everything that we already know from existing content. Because, as it turns out, while we've yet to have any dedicated storylines about them, Tordog has been sneaking in tidbits about this topic for a long time.
あまりジロジロ見ないで
For clarity before we start, many of the characters we'll be discussing are typically addressed with their family name, but as there's obviously a lot of overlap there, we'll largely be sticking with the given names for clarity. Okay? Anyway. Beginning with our secondary mascot of the game, Carleen is princess of the floating city of Lumopolis, making her the ultimate heir to the throne. She lost her mother very young, having only her emotionally distant father to raise her. In an effort to serve her father and her kingdom to her best, she has taken up arms as a knight of Lumopolis, and through her perseverance and expertise in combat, has ascended to the role of captain of the Guard of Lumopolis Gardens, where she commands the 4 angels, the highest-ranking knights in the kingdom. When we meet her in the main story, her heart and mentality firmly rests with the nobility. But as she spends more time traveling the land of Astra with our other main characters, Vice and the Navigator, cracks in her beliefs start to form. Many times throughout the story, we have seen Carleen's motivations and morals to be aligned much differently than Lumopolis nobles. She will do things they find as unthinkable or even oppositional to the nobility, going so far as to completely disregard orders in Chapter 8, activating the most powerful weapon in the city to save the lower classes from onslaught, and as a result, suffer the punishment of temporary exile. Carleen is a noble by birth, but refuses to betray her morals, instead fighting for her friends, and for every citizen of her kingdom, regardless of class. This develops further throughout event stories, where we see her continuously seek to find out truths and find out her own sense of right and wrong. It is a focal point during the Port of Hope event, where the Laird of the city doubts she would be of any help, having assumed she would think and behave the same way as other nobles from Lumopolis. She proves to him through their battles and struggles together that she has grown through her friends and experiences into a unique presence in Lumopolis, which manifests through her newfound exploration into the fire element of Luminatics, the polar opposite to her ice abilities. As her morals and ideals come from a true sense of justice and care for her friends and citizens, and as she further grows beyond the influence of the floating city, she finds her ideals in more tension with her birthplace, and that tension has extended to cause strife with even her own father.
カレンはまだ努力が必要だ。
Carleen's father is Duke Daniel de Schwartz, a man with many titles and the current ruler of Lumopolis. He wields power over the entire kingdom, and his influence extends far beyond the floating island Lumopolis was built on, impacting nearly every Aurorian in Astra. And the responsibility he bears has aged him far beyond his years. While his powers are not defined in specifics, he appears to be the final decision maker for most Lumopolis operations, including the structure of the lower judicial branches and all operations of the Guard. That being said, there is a power balance to be struck between him and the nobles of Lumopolis, with major decisions being coordinated with the 2 other branches of Lumopolis government, the Elder Council and the Hall of Justice. His work schedule, combined with his standoffish personality, has led to him being isolated and emotionally distant from others, including members of his own family. He often treats Carleen more as a subordinate than as his own child. This has created a tenuous relationship between the two, with Daniel primarily opting to wield his political power to push her in the direction he sees fit. The most egregious example of this was his changing of the rules of acceptance to Lumopolis Gardens in the year Carleen was applying. On one hand, this was his way of trying to protect his daughter from the horrors of war, but the method he resorted to both shows his instinct to abuse his power for his own goals, and shows his failures to communicate with his own daughter. However, there was one person in particular that he did form a proper relationship with.
白夜城がその権力を用いて民衆が築いたばかりの自信を損なうようなことはない。母もそう思うはず。
Daniel's wife is never shown properly in game, as she died well before the start of the main story. But her presence is just as felt as her absence, and we learn quite a bit about her. Daniel gives us her name in multiple voice lines. Her name was Joshua, and Daniel says in his files that his time with her was the only time he was genuinely happy with life. We do have a face to match to the name from promotional art, but the only in-game render we have is the spirit in Daniel's Ascension art. It's not clear what her role in Lumopolis beyond being the wife of the City Lord was. Most information we really learn about her pertains to her death, and even there it is quite vague. We hear from Carleen in the Frozen Snowland extra chapter that Joshua was very ill for some time. And we learn in the main story that when Carleen returned from her training, that Joshua had already passed away. Though it's not clear if it was the illness or something else, and Carleen cannot remember the details. We know even less of the events before this, merely that she at some point married Daniel and together they raised their 2 daughters. Wait, 2 daughters?
この暗い色のスカートはあまり好きじゃないわ。
Mia is the first daughter of Daniel and Joshua and the original heir of Lumopolis. She is much older than Carleen, though her upbringing was very similar to Carleen's, having a difficult and distant relationship with her father due to how busy and how disinterested in showing familial affection he was. And also like Carleen, instead of maintaining her life as purely a denizen of the castle, joined the Knights of Lumopolis, though her reasons for doing so were much more overtly related to her wishing to be useful for her father. Much of Mia's life as the heir is shrouded in mystery, but we do know she was at least an active participant in battle during the Second Darkover Crisis, at which point she suffered some sort of injury or casualty that resulted in her permanent discharge and permanent disabling. In an act of desperation to restore her physical abilities to any degree at all, Daniel sent her to stay in Illumina for treatment, and it was there that she fell into the hands of a certain scientist, one we've all come to know quite well.
あの女、きっとどこかで前よりもおぞましい研究を完成させているんでしょうね。
This scientist's name was Denier, who is best known for her extensive Aurorian testing and eventual betrayal of Illumina and turning to the Eclipse. But her presence is very important, as it sheds a more clear light on the experiments done to Mia. Denier is not mentioned by name in Mia's files, but we know it is her, as it is mentioned that during the experiments, Mia got to know a fellow test subject named Eve. These experiments on Mia's body led to the birth of a new personality, a new character in Mia's mind, who chose the name Baba Yaga. When Joshua found out what was happening to Mia, she was furious and fought against Denier to rescue her daughter. However, it was too late, and the further damage to Mia had already been done. Her psyche became fragmented, and unlike Eve's psyche during Eye of the Storm, was not quite put together again.
私があそこに属していると思ってるの？あの白い城に？冗談でしょ？
Baba Yaga's personality is a stark contrast to Mia's, being energetic, confident, sadistic, and extremely volatile. The two do not share memories, and are best thought of as entirely separate characters that merely share a body, which is how they treat each other and how everyone else comes to treat them after enough interactions. Baba Yaga's personality was extremely unpleasant to the nobility of Lumopolis, including to Daniel, who seems to have formally cut the two out of the family after the experiments were over. But Baba Yaga was accepted by one person in particular, Mia. The two are each other's other half, with Baba Yaga becoming the main personality of their system, protecting Mia emotionally and physically from all outside suffering, and being the actual character we play as in-game. And with Mia being the one character Baba Yaga can maintain an unambiguous, positive relationship with. Mia even refers to Baba Yaga as her girlfriend in a terminal dialogue, although there is a decent chance this was just a translation error. Regardless, the two live harmoniously in Lower Lumopolis, with rumors spreading from Baba Yaga's antics of a black spider causing havoc in the city.
There is one other person than Mia that Baba Yaga is shown to truly care about. Carleen.
She frequently mentions Carleen in her dialogue, and displays to the navigator directly that she worries about Carleen's overall well-being and misses getting to have a relationship with her.
Unfortunately, as part of her disownment from the family, neither her nor Mia is allowed to approach Carleen. And Carleen does not even know she exists. Carleen is under the impression that her sister died alongside her mother, even up to the port event.
Carleen remembers almost nothing about Joshua,
and does not even remember Mia's name. And learning the secrets behind what happened to her lost family is an ongoing goal of Carleen's. Carleen even knows of the Black Spider from her files, however, she believes it to be only a rumor. Carleen is so close, yet so far from figuring out the truth.
Carleen, not knowing what happened to Mia, appears to be intentional on Daniel's part. Despite Mia being banished from the royal family, she and Daniel are shown to have secret meetings to talk over tea, with Baba Yaga staying quiet during their time together. Despite himself maintaining regular contact with Mia, Daniel never lets her interact with Carleen, and never lets Carleen know anything about her. This is likely due to the controversial nature of Baba Yaga and the fragile state of Mia's mind. She might be allowed to visit her father, but she can never stay in the city, as she will never be parted from the Black Spider. That's everyone we know in the core family. Daniel, Joshua, their second daughter Carleen, and their estranged eldest daughter Mia with her other half Baba Yaga. Any extended family in Lumopolis is unmentioned, at least at time of recording. But this is not the end of the family we're aware of. Oh no, not even close. But in order to learn about other members, we have to venture outside of Lumopolis, to the kingdom of Northland.
貴族とはいえ、カレンには傲慢さなど全く見当たらぬ。彼女は真の白夜城のために生まれたのだ。
Northland is the original land of the Aurorian peoples, but today is the smallest faction in the continent, due to its frigid climate keeping its population low. The faction is its own kingdom, protected from the eclipse by a magical barrier, which is powered by the current ruler of the kingdom, Queen Shaya Bethlehem. Shaya was born into the role of future queen, though we have no details on her parents, as she was instead raised/mentored by the ageless servant of the royal family, Novio, who taught her the customs of the Northland royal family and the role of the queen. She took the throne and reinstated the barrier when she was only 9 years old. It's unclear how long ago this was, but as she was already an adult by the time Carleen came to Northland, we can at least pinpoint it was a decent time before the Darkover crisis. While we know nothing about her parents, we do know something very surprising about her immediate family. Shaya tells us in her story that she is the youngest of 4 sisters. Her eldest sister left Northland to become a Lumopolis knight. The second eldest was wedded to a Lumopolis governor. And the third was disowned for her relationship with a foreigner, with Shaya being the sister to take the Northland throne.
Looking closer at this information about the second sister, it becomes clear that this is actually Joshua. The current governor of Lumopolis is Daniel, and in his story, he mentions that Shaya sent an envoy representing a contract to solidify his claim to the throne of Lumopolis, which sounds like nothing, but lines up with the arranged marriage Shaya describes. We also see Shia refer to Joshua by name in Frozen Snowland. And the final piece of the puzzle that confirms this theory is, in of all places, Istvan's voice lines, where he claims Daniel only has the power he does because of his wife. The only reason that would be true is if Daniel and Joshua were wedded as a show of Northland's support for the new governor of Lumopolis. This means that Joshua was Shia's sister, and additionally means that Shia, by blood, is Carleen and Mia's aunt. This helps to give more context to Carleen's Northland studies. She was sent to live with other family while her mother was ill. This also means that Carleen and Mia are not only nobility of Lumopolis, but are also relatives of the nobility of Northland. With Bethlehem having no other successors, this potentially means Carleen is not just the heir of Lumopolis, but also the heir of Northland, and could end up taking the throne of both and combining the two factions.
Unfortunately, we do not have any information about the first and third sisters. We do, however, know another interesting member of the Bethlehem family lineage, Amelie. Amelie was the queen of Northland in the distant past, long before any in-game events took place. We find out about her through Novio's stories. Amelie was the first member of the royal family that he served, as she was the one to find him when he first awoke into Astra. Novio is seemingly immortal and has served every ruler of Northland since, all due to his eternal devotion to Amelie. Actually, the way he speaks about Amelie is very interesting, and seems to hint towards more romantic feelings for her. And considering his name literally translates to boyfriend, and it's unclear how he was given his name, it's somewhat possible that Novio was secretly Amelie's lover, and thus also Shia's ancestor. But this is just speculation, and unlikely speculation at that.
And that's everyone we've learned about so far. The Schwartz family of Daniel, Joshua, and their children, and the Bethlehem sisters, which links the kingdom through Joshua and includes Shia, along with the distant ancestor Amelie. The only other character that might deserve mention is Lola, as her story states she has the same power as Shia, which could potentially imply that she's next in line for the throne, but she's not a descendant of Amelie, so we aren't including her for now. Even without her, this family tree certainly lives up to the status of heroic European nobility. Almost none of what we found is stated directly, and we had to really scour for every bit of information. Thankfully, we'll never have such a big project again, as we should get the full picture of the family soon, and other Lumopolis characters have much simpler files. Like ms.blanc here, for example. She's just a 4-star unit serving as the guide of Lumopolis. Nothing too intricate, right, ms.blanc?
ヨシュア様と同じ家族の名誉を得ることができて光栄です。
What did you say?
ヨシュア様と同じ家族の名誉を得ることができて光栄です。
What?
道に迷いましたか？私がいるので大丈夫ですよ。
Okay, so after extensively reviewing the files, we think it's very likely that ms.blanc is actually the first Bethlehem sister. This is extremely well hidden, and we'll explain it in a bit, but first a rundown on ms.blanc. So, ms.blanc refers to herself as the guide of Lumopolis. She's a member of the Lumopolis Gardens working the niche position of assisting in travel, as well as assisting the city lord in somewhat unclear ways. This is mostly shown by how she talks like a tour guide. Now, she sounds fairly simple, but she repeatedly asks the player to not try to dig too far into her past, and deliberately tells us very little about herself. She carries with her a rolling suitcase at all times, to the point it's even listed as her equipment in battle, but refuses to show anyone what's in it. She also claims she's older than she appears, and is so secretive that we don't even know her real name. ms.blanc is only a nickname. But she does let us in on one specific secret, which was her time before being a guide. When ms.blanc was originally serving as a Lumopolis knight, she was a night watch, a high-ranking position that even many knights are unaware exists. The role of a night watch is to guard the city in secret during the night, a role that involves not just coastal exploration and post-guarding, but combat and even assassination. In the case of ms.blanc, she was particularly adept at assassination. and claims to have returned from the end of every shift with her dress dyed red with blood. This is how she came to be called Miss Rotto by other knights. After retiring from the position and taking on the role of guide, she changed her nickname from Miss Rotto to ms.blanc, as her dress now stays clean and white. For many, this appears to be the end of her backstory, but ms.blanc seems to be hiding something much more beyond this.
The evidence is very slim, but when we consider it alongside her dialogue line, everything does add up that she is the first sister Shia mentions. She specifically says that she's honored to be related to Joshua, not Daniel.
And she tells us in her stories that she doesn't particularly care to protect Daniel, so it's unlikely that she's blood related to him instead. If we look again at Shia's wording,
she describes that the first sister was willingly taken.
This could mean anything from a political offer from Northland to a full-on royal family kidnapping. All we know for sure is it ends with her staying in Lumopolis as a knight. ms.blanc was a knight in her past and maintains particularly close ties to the royal family. We don't know ms.blanc's real name. We've only learned of pseudonyms. It makes sense that she hides it so as to not give away her family lineage. We also don't know what's in her suitcase, which she should have no further reason to keep hidden if her only secret is her past as a Night Watch. Another curiosity is the existence of the Colossus book Northland Geographica. This book is a full interview with ms.blanc, where she describes in great detail the various locations of interest in the Northland, including the Winter Palace, where in her description she claims to have personally witnessed the Aurora dance along the palace walls, a sight that can only be witnessed with personal invite from the Queen. The book waves this off by claiming that since she's a tour guide, she's visited many places, and it's possible she was merely there as a servant of the royal family, but it could also be her visiting her sister in the north.
Tordog also seems to have shown further ties between ms.blanc and Shia through their in-game kit design, as both characters are water elemental converters, whose active abilities convert 4 tiles to blue, and both of their equipment abilities grant themselves and allied water Aurorians attack buffs under easily achieved conditions. While there are many examples in the game of similar active or passive abilities, it is quite rare for 2 characters to have so many similarities across multiple aspects of their kits. The only other characters that have this are Dana and Robin, who are also sisters.
And then there's the final piece of the puzzle. Something we can only call the Black Tea Conspiracy.
一緒にお茶しませんこと？新しいお友達と一緒に人生最後の楽しいひとときを過ごしましょう。
Okay, this is gonna get a little tinfoil hatty, but here's out for a second. Without me going into too much detail, Alchemy Stars uses food very frequently as a metaphor for cultural differences between factions and continents and the relationships between them. This crops up everywhere in the story, especially with Diesel Wrench and Cloud Island, who have completely different diets than everyone else. With this in mind, we can see an even more specific example of this metaphor, and that is the shared fondness for black tea between members of our royal families. This is most prevalent with Mia and Baba Yaga. They both really, really love black tea. Like, a lot. It takes up a significant portion of their voice files and terminal dialogues, to the point it is a specifically noteworthy aspect of their characters. This is interesting because the only other character that is shown to have such a noteworthy fondness for black tea is Shia. It is featured in her voice files and stories as well, and it's only these 2 characters who have such a noteworthy fondness for tea, and for whom specifically black tea is mentioned, making it a link between the 2. Shia grew a fondness for black tea from it being served to her by Novio, who had served it to the rulers of Northland for centuries. But where did Mia pick it up from? Because if we read the group Colossus story One Mysterious Hour, we learn that Daniel does not drink black tea. He didn't even know how to brew it. He had to be given the recipe for Knight's black tea, specifically so he could serve it to Mia for their secret meetings. He didn't know the recipe, despite being the leader of the military. Thus, it's very likely that Mia acquired the taste from her mother, Joshua, who would have likely also been drinking it during her time in the Winter Palace with her sisters and Novio. With that in mind, we can see one other character that knows the Knight's black tea recipe, the one that Daniel learned it from, and the one that likely also learned it while in Northland. ms.blanc. She also mentions a fondness for black tea in her files, albeit less prominently than the other 2 characters, but enough for it to still be noteworthy. Thus, we feel it is possible that this is all intended as a link, where black tea grew popular among the Northland royals, which included all 4 Bethlehem sisters, who brought their taste with them to Lumopolis, through ms.blanc, who spread it to the knights, and through Joshua, who spread it to her daughter Mia, showing them all related by blood.
Of course, we don't have that confirmed for certain. All we know for sure is that ms.blanc lands somewhere on this tree. And some things don't entirely add up, like how her profile claims she was born in Lumopolis. However, we have seen other characters outright lie or leave out information in their stories and dialogue. But we've yet to confirm any lies in actual profile descriptions. She is the final loose end, and at the time of recording, she has yet to reveal her secrets. The only other place that might tell is her suitcase, and her suitcase stays closed.
And with that, we should finally have covered everyone. Thank you so much for watching and for indulging us in our rantings about caffeinated beverages and single lines of dialogue. If you found it as interesting as we hope, be sure to like the video and maybe suggest in the comments any future lore topics you'd be interested in. We'll likely make a follow-up to this video after the anniversary event to see just how right or wrong we were. So if you're interested in that, or in any future analyses of the lore and characters of Alchemy Stars, be sure to subscribe. Until then, thank you so much again, and may the aurora shine within you.
A new character in Mia's mind who chose the name Baba Yaga. Yeah, just like John Wick.